Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. This week, we take a look at the early history of the Battle Creek Sanitarium. On September 5th, 1866, the Western Health Reform Institute officially opened its doors. As an institution, it had a twofold object: to treat disease on what were called hygienic principles, and to instruct people on the theory and application related to, quote, the important subject of so caring for both body and mind. They plan to use only those means employed as nature can best use in her recuperative work, such as water, air, light, heat, food, sleep, rest, recreation, etc. Those might sound familiar to Adventists 150 years later in 2023. Its first managing physician was the 38-year-old Horatio S. Lay. Dr. Lay had been born in the U.S. state of New York in 1828. He studied medicine at Western Reserve College, today's Case Western Reserve University, and moved to Michigan to practice medicine there. He married his wife Julia in 1852, and they became Adventists in 1856. Julia's ill health led them to travel in 1862 to Dr. James C. Jackson's Our Home on the Hillside in Dansville, New York, where Julia became a patient and Horatio worked as a physician, learning what he could. After 3 years in New York, the Lays returned to Michigan, and Dr. Lay took up his private practice until called to lead the institute. Dr. Lay was joined by two other doctors, 34-year-old John F. Byington and 42-year-old Phoebe M. Lampson. Dr. Byington had become a Sabbath-keeping Adventist in 1851, a little bit before his parents, John and Catherine Byington, had also become Sabbath keepers. Yes, Dr. Byington's father was John Byington, the Seventh-day Adventist Church's first General Conference president. Lampson had been born in 1824 to Jonathan and Maria Lampson in the U.S. state of New York. She studied at Clarkson Academy, and in 1855, she had decided to study medicine. Soon, Doctors Lay, Byington, and Lampson were joined by 25-year-old Kate Lindsay, who was determined to work at the Institute. Lindsay was sent to New York to train with Russell Trowell, the advocate of hydrotherapy that all three had previously worked with. She also took courses at Bellevue Medical College and returned to the Institute in late 1869. The Institute encountered financial difficulties and struggled to stay open. In 1870, Dr. Lay left the Western Health Reform Institute and restarted his private practice of medicine in Allegan County, Michigan. Cognizant that a trained medical doctor was needed, in addition to the hydropathic physicians at the Institute, and encouraged by church leaders to study medicine, Lindsay became one of the first 17 women admitted to the University of Michigan's medical school and began working her way through to her degree. In 1872, Dr. Byington tragically died at the age of 40, leaving the Institute in dire straits. In 1875, 25-year-old John H. Kellogg joined the staff of the Western Health Reform Institute. Kellogg had been sponsored in 1873 by church leaders to be trained at the University of Michigan and then at Bellevue Medical College, and he graduated in the spring of 1875. He was joined later that year by Dr. Lindsay, who had graduated that fall, having paid her own way. Kellogg became the medical superintendent and head of surgery, and Dr. Lindsay became the head of obstetrics, women's health, and pediatrics. At that time, both were determined to keep the institution in line with its original principles and with advances in medical knowledge. By June 1877, the Western Health Reform Institute had been renamed as the Battle Creek Medical and Surgical Sanitarium, though most people called it the Battle Creek Sanitarium, or even more simply, the SAN. The rest, they say, is history, ending with the purchase of the SAN's main building in 1942 by the United States government. This all comes from This Week in Adventist History.